Meet the Chicago Historians will return right after these messages. Hey friends, you know today is March the 19th. And of course, you know, March brings April, May, and that brings the rainy season. And you want to make sure that the roof on your house is in real good shape. And by doing that, you can call Best Brothers Roofing at area code 630-616-1359. Mike Best will come out in his nice, shiny, red pickup truck with the ladders strapped on the top and the signs on either side of the doors. Best Brothers Roofing. He'll come out and take a look at your roof, look at it, give you an estimate, and then you go from there. Now remember, we're going to be getting into the rainy season, and you don't want drip, 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 drip on your bed or your kitchen table or your favorite chair in your den. And if you do, that means that you're going to be losing your ceiling also, because if your ceiling gets wet, that means that you're not only going to have to replace the roof, but you're going to have to replace the ceiling in your room. So you can avoid double expense. You can avoid all that problem by just picking up your phone and calling 630-616-1359. That's Best Brothers Roofing, Mike Best. Once again, he'll come out in his nice, shiny red vehicle, and he'll look at your roof, give you an estimate, and then go from there. Don't be sorry. Don't have double expense. Best Brothers Roofing, area code 630-616-1359. And he does great work. I know I've seen the work that Mike has done, and all the people that Mike has done work for are very satisfied with his work. So once again, don't have drip, 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 drip in your house. Don't have your ceiling get wet and fall down on you. Don't have double expense. Call Mike Best, area code 630-616-1359. And you are listening to Meet the Chicago Historians from the John Nevada Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network. And now back to our panel and our moderator, Jack Ryan. Go ahead, Jack. It's all yours.
Hello. Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. Hey, everyone off the swings and now, and let's get back and fall in.
Fall in.
Let's look alive here, gang. About face.
10 hut.
10 hut?
10 hut.
I don't know. I was a draft dodger. I never knew any of that stuff. So.
Oh, yeah? A guy your
I
size,
wasn't a draft
guy your
dodger.
size could
Did
dodge.
you like Canada?
Actually, or as Duke Wayne would say, saddle up, saddle up.
Yeah.
Actually, I wasn't a draft dodger. I got drafted. I get the notice. Greetings, you know.
Yeah.
August of '67 on a Friday. Well, I'm ready to go. Next day, the very next day, I get a notice from the police department that since it had been so long since we took the exam and the original physicals, we hadn't started any classes. They wanted one more physical. So I take the doggone letter down to the personnel. What do I do with this? And Sergeant down there, it turned out his name was Frank Gaffney later on. He says, hey, he's got 2 strikes against him. He went to St. Rita. He went to St. Rita.
Yeah.
But anyway, not to anything to do with that. He goes in the back, comes out with the typist. They made out a letter for me to take right to my draft board, requesting that my induction be canceled because, if you remember, they were afraid that the cities were going to go up for grabs so much in the
Late 60s.
late 60s,
yeah.
and they were building up the police department. So
Yeah.
I still got it somewhere.
Didn't work for me.
No. My dad went through the same thing from a different angle.
What's that?
He was in the medical line, and we had a shortage of doctors. And, he was a veterinarian.
Oh.
And
You may
we
so.
still had a shortage. There,
Yeah.
everything had
Oh,
its
yeah.
plant. Right.
Yeah.
And he could do human,
Oh,
that.
sure.
And in fact, they go to school 1 year longer, 9 years, because I understand animals don't talk. So.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he had his hospital. He was, young man and family, and and he got drafted.
Because he was needed.
He was
Yeah.
needed,
Yeah.
and it was Fort Sheridan, and he was there about a week, and running through his whole life. What am I going to do? And I got nobody to replace. And he too got that surprise. They called out his name.
Yeah.
And that's when we talk about our gas prices now. We'll go into other subject. Every car had a letter on it, A, B,
Oh,
C.
cards, yeah.
Yeah.
And so they plunked this thing on his car and told him, go home and we'll call you when we need you. And
They didn't-
that's
Yeah.
how he didn't have to
Yeah.
go. He
Yeah.
wasn't proud of that as much as that moment was
Yeah.
deciphered.
Our family dentist, his name is Dr. Bonus, and he's got 4 sons that are all dentists. Anyway, he was on North Avenue, and he was telling me, he said, he's an old man. He's probably in his early 40s or so. He said, I'm like 4, what do they call it?
4F.
4, no, not 4F. 4A or something,
Oh.
which means he was A, but he was like in the 4th group. He said, you know what, with my experience, etc., he said, I'm going to go in as a major right off the bat. I'm not going to be a second lieutenant, I'm going to be in charge of a dental clinic. And they never did call him, But I guess he had...
That also happened to my dad.
Yeah.
That he would have entered as
yeah,
rank
yeah,
already.
as an officer, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just like
But,
chaplains,
however we got to that,
Yeah.
that's how it
Mentioning,
was.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Mentioning veterinarian makes me think of A Day at the Races at the end when Groucho says to Margaret Dumont, it's true, Emily, I am a horse doctor, but if you marry me, I'll never look at another horse. I'm reminded that...
That would cover a lot of ground. You cover a lot of ground too. They're going to tear you down and put up a parking lot.
She never understood it. She said,
That's what you hear,
yeah. Gee, that's funny. I don't know why.
We'll bring up your first marriage, but why bring in the Civil War or something like that? Anyway, I'm reminded, Vic Justino, our old member who returned for a while, he had to leave a little early, but he left us
He's going
a
to his draft.
replacement. Want to identify yourself, sir? Please?
Ron Smolin.
Louder.
Ron Smolin,
And you are what?
local band leader in Chicago.
Band leader. See, anyone need any bands out there?
Oh, how marvelous. My father-in-law was a band leader.
Topic.
Yeah, used to have the Sky Club at Harlem and North.
I've heard of the place.
It's now a Walgreens.
Oh,
Everything's a
Everybody identify
Walgreens.
yourselves now. Liam.
And my name is Jeanette Frontier. In fact, I understand my last name was Frontiera. T-E-R-A was the ending of it. And my father-in-law, in his day, got a job playing for Al Capone at one of his saloons. He, in turn, Capone, enticed my father-in-law that he would get much more work if his name was more within range
Anglicized.
of anglicized.
Yeah.
And that's
Drop
how
the
we got
vowel.
our Frontier name.
Yeah.
So, nice to meet you.
Jeanette, are you related at all? I think it was an arranger of Dominic Frontier who did some...
The movie producer?
yeah, well, he came out with some albums, I
Yeah,
know, in the 50s.
Distant cousins.
Distant cousin, very good.
Okay,
Very
identify
distinguished
yourself.
name. Oh, Rich Lang, local
Yeah.
history buff.
Yes, that's just ironic, that connection. But yes,
Very good.
I do.
Very good.
uh-huh.
Ken Little, and we had a Frontier Avenue in our old neighborhood over by North Avenue. And,
Yes.
I think there's maybe, I don't know if there is a Frontier anymore.
And I
but
heard there's a Jeanette Street too. Did
not
you know
in
that?
no,
I got a
not
old
in
book. I'm gonna
Chicago.
look if
No.
it used to be or
Yeah,
what.
okay.
I'll have that
yeah.
with me next
Yeah,
time.
okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Next one.
And I am Charles Dickens. I would modestly describe myself as the greatest of all English novelists. And I'm here today because as we are observing historical events, last month we observed my 200th birthday. I was born in February of 1812, and I'm very glad to be with you here. I understand you still read many of my stories, and particularly at Christmas time, love my Christmas carols. So it's very good to be with you, and greetings from jolly old England.
There was a lot
Really
of-
captured
there was
his
a lot of
voice
candles,
exactly. Yeah, friends who knew him said I do a superb
Yeah, right.
Charles Dickens.
Yeah, that's what he sounded like. He
It's
was at the
exactly-
Chicago
exactly.
Theater one time.
How do you know?
Yeah.
Well, the couple of he narrated some of the early versions of A Christmas Carol. So.
By the way, I'm Jack Ryan, gang.
And I'm John Escacholco, and very glad to be here, honoring my good friend Charles Dickens.
Did you ever hear this? It's Gene Shepard. Everyone, Gene Shepard wrote
Sure.
they made it into A Christmas Story. It was all, "In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash," which they made into that movie A Christmas Story, where the kid wants the BB gun.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, anyway,
Red
he had a spoken word. It was like Dixieland music going on. There's this great parade going by. Hey, look, it's Eric the Red. Hey, Eric, look, he's bald. And then Disraeli, look at him throwing that baton. But it makes me think of something he said, somewhere about everybody coming was so different in parade. And then he says, "I want to join up." It's bizarre if you ever hear it. No, I guess it must be.
I guess you gotta be
Dickens
there.
lived until 1870, so he was just short of the possibility of having a recording of his voice. And he did lectures. So if he had lived, he was just on right at the edge before recording became feasible.
Well,
so.
Mr. Dickens, you'd be happy to hear this year, even though 200 years have gone by, I update you, we sold 1.76 million candy canes, which goes around the equator 7 times.
Very good. I'm glad to know that Christmas is still celebrated
and with your
in
promotions,
my great
we hope
spirit.
to go do much better.
He's called sometimes the man who saved Christmas because his story actually in many ways it created our modern understanding of what we think of as an old-fashioned traditional Christmas. Really, in many ways, draws upon the writings of Charles Dickens.
And there's history.
It's
So you see, it is our background, isn't it? Everything
Christmas
and the
greeting cards is a
structures.
relatively recent phenomenon.
Queen Victoria. That goes back. Most of our traditions are actually, we think of them as ancient. They're really mostly 19th century traditions.
A lot of American stuff in there.
Yeah.
Thomas Nast was was he the one that created
The elephant for the Republicans,
And he also created,
the donkey for the Democrats.
St. Nicholas.
and he contributed to our Santa Claus image. Developed. A number of people had a hand in it. Haddon Sundblom, the cartoon, the illustrator for Coca-Cola, really finished the job. Really gave us our American idea of the big jolly Santa Claus.
That guy looks so much like my father. No, my dad.
If you think of the Coca-Cola Christmas art,
Yes,
very
yeah,
big.
right.
the original
Had
one.
rosy cheeked,
Thomas-
receding
Very
hairline.
true.
Yeah.
Thomas
Yeah.
Nast had a great deal to do. Clement Clark Moore with the visit from St.
Nicholas.
Nicholas.
I think Nast illustrated
Night
that for.
before
It
Christmas.
was the night
Washington
before
Irving.
Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Washington Irving wrote about St. Nicholas, so it kind of developed all during the 19th century until you get the full package, really.
And he went from
with
being a
Sundblom.
stoic, serious-looking guy to this round, happy,
And in Clement Clark Moore's work, he's a jolly little elf. He's pictured as being a little
Small.
elf-like figure, not our big jolly,
Big elf.
full-sized, Santa Claus. But it just progressed as each of these men kind of had a hand in giving you. And then Thomas Nast did these Civil War era cartoons, very patriotic. They'd have Santa Claus with an American flag visiting giving gifts to the Union soldiers during the Civil War, and he'd be decked out in kind of a red, white, and blue costume.
lumps of coal to the Confederates.
So, yeah, absolutely. So, and then he...
They didn't know what to do with
It
coal.
was really funny. I went downtown. When my older sister, she was at Wayette College at Immaculate Heart College in Los Angeles, and I was a freshman in high school. Well, she came in to study, so I went downtown. I went down with her around Christmas time, and I'm looking at the display cases they had out there. They had some bound volumes of Harper's Weekly, and they had that Visit from St. Nicholas, I believe, was illustrated by woodcut drawings by Thomas Nast. But over here, I read the whole thing. Over here is a little ad in the corner. It says, read like this: morphine, break that opium habit.
Sure.
Well, of course you're going to break it. It's stronger than opium. I'm thinking this is 1880s probably.
They didn't know.
Yeah, but I'm
Opium,
just saying.
opium, morphine, and
Was more pure.
they were considered to be like wonder drugs.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just,
Cocaine.
It just struck me, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, ultimately, it's heroin is the strongest part
They
of this.
didn't realize they hadn't yet
Yeah.
gotten to the
In
point
all the
of
patent
the
medicines.
benefits.
Yeah.
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 Well,
Well, they-
Coca-Cola had the coca leaf stuff in it,
That's right.
and
Yeah.
7-Up originally had lithium, and they were sold as a tonic to make you feel better.
Yeah.
Lithium and 7-Up. That's interesting.
Yeah.
You know what else is interesting talking about Clement Moore? He was a president of a university in, was it Columbia?
Troy, he lived in Troy, New York.
He lived in, I know. He also experimented with photography, and he's taken some of the very first
Nude photos.
Yeah.
Centered
Of
photos?
Marilyn Monroe, yeah. No, of like around the university. I thought it was in New York, and then maybe in the 1850s or 55, 57 or so. And I've seen him, a couple of them.
Ken, was
yeah.
he a clergyman too?
He was.
I think he was. Yeah.
He was buried in a churchyard a churchyard, and I don't know if they still do it, but until at least sometime in the 20th century, the children from the church school on Christmas Eve would go out and recite the poem at his grave. They would. It was like a custom that they would recite the Visit from St. Nicholas at his grave in honor of his having.
The name is The Visit from St. Nicholas, not.
Yes.
But it starts out, 'twas the night.
'Twas the night, but it's officially was. He wrote it for his family.
Yeah.
He did not write it as a publication. He wrote it as something to read to his own kids on Christmas Eve.
Kind of like
And
that
the little
Virginia
people
letter.
got a hold of it and published it. And it was some years before he actually he didn't want the notoriety. And it was some years before he actually admitted that yes, I did write this. This was
He never got royalties from it.
No.
It is interesting to realize that as much as we use dates and they go back thousands and how many years ago, about the last 150 years is probably everything we know about what we know as far as verses and writers and the inventions and
traditions. Traditions don't go. Christmas trees.
Right.
Only goes back,
That's
Exactly.
19th
I mean,
century.
19th
In
century.
America, it's
In
a
America,
19th
Right.
yeah.
I mean, if you really look at the whole picture, it all kind of just started.
Evolved
It might
and,
be over, but
Yeah.
it just kind of you were in on almost every.
Well, there was probably
thing
more
that
change
was
in
the
the 20th
progress.
in the 20th century. There was probably more change
Definitely.
than in the previous 500 years,
Right,
maybe
and then
more, because society didn't. There weren't that many changes, until you get into the 19th century and you get electricity and telephones
Exactly.
and steam
Each-
engines and
each
all,
one-
and then everything bleeds.
Telegraph.
And then
Right.
it builds and builds, and photography and motion pictures. and-
Exactly.
So
Once they had the form to work with, it grew off of there.
Well, you
It
realize
seemed like-
in not quite 70 years, you go from that little box kite that the Wright brothers flew at Kitty
To a
Hawk
plane.
to a man landing on the moon.
Yes,
Yeah.
I
right,
mean, think
right.
of how rapid that was from.
Largely due to 2 world wars. I mean,
Yeah.
Which
Or-
sure.
Orville
I
Wright
mean-
actually flew in a jet plane.
did he?
Yeah, he died in 47.
Right.
And
That's right.
and I look. You know what? I look back. Both my parents were born in 1902. 1902, everything was horse-drawn. Had been horse-drawn for,
A few cars.
from the
1902,
Roman,
There's no airplane. There's no
no
radio.
airplane. Automobiles were sort of a novelty, really.
Sure.
There's no
They'll
radio.
never last,
No, never. Yeah,
fad.
telephones were. Yeah, well, they were out, but
Yeah.
you not very. It was a business thing. Most, you had to have money, And can you imagine what horses and the manure and
mess.
a mess.
A mess.
We can
Telegraph,
remember.
you mentioned that.
We
you know.
used to see him as kids as the ragman that have a horse.
Oh yeah.
Ragman.
My dad moved our family. Of course, I wasn't born yet. My older sister was once he rented the horse and
Is
buggy.
that right? Wow.
Because they used to rent them right over near, across from the amphitheater in Halstead. There were several places.
Oh sure.
Livery. Henny Barnes was the place he'd rent them.
Yeah.
I have some
Dex-
photos of aunts and uncles marrying where they were brought to
Yeah,
the church
church
on a horse.
on a horse,
Not,
yeah.
not as
And not because it was something quaint,
no,
but because
that's
that's
all.
the way they
that
had.
was it.
Yeah, that was it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so that was my thought the other day. My goodness, everything we really are, witnessing is about 150
Years old. Yeah. Yeah.
Compared to the Earth and the age
Yeah.
of everything.
And as a very recent
It's
sign of rapid
amazing.
changes,
It's
we've seen
amazing.
the last print edition of the Encyclopedia
Big-
Britannica.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
shocking. Isn't that shocking to
That
think
really-
they're
yeah,
no
yeah.
longer
Not
going to
surprising, really,
print
but-
Yeah.
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 the encyclopedia. That's
that
that's
did
incredible.
too.
Yeah.
I
How
heard
about
that
Our
yesterday.
yearbooks, all the supplements you'd get.
Yeah.
How about Funk and Wagnalls used to buy at the A&P? You get a volume a week or whatever.
Yes,
right.
Yeah, Colliers
That wasn't
used
that
to
long
put one
ago,
out.
yeah.
Yeah.
Enable Johnny
Door-to-door
Carson.
salesman
Oh, he
did
used to
that.
call that Funk and
He
Wagnalls.
always said that the Karnak, that the answers were on Funk and Wagnall's porch.
Yeah,
in a mayonnaise jar.
Today, since
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. I can remember when they went door to door and they would use your neighbor's name.
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
felt
they just-
so like,
Yeah, you were left out.
we'll have to
World
buy.
Book?
Yeah,
World Book,
the
yeah.
World
Those
Book,
were good.
because they've got one, and, you
Yeah.
know, and sometimes you never even opened it, you know,
And
if
even
you
in
were
the old
that
days, they
type
sold
of,
for a few $100
right,
a set.
you know,
They were
and then the
very pricey.
family that
Yeah.
knew you bought it, they needed it for their homework, so
Yeah.
sometime the H was missing, and
Yeah, what happened that I loaned it?
yeah, to who, you know.
By the way, you know, I go to estate sales every Friday. One book everybody has is like a dictionary,
Yes.
or in
Well, I'm
maybe
sure gonna
not a
make
big
sure I-
encyclopedia, but there is some sort of a world book or something, and you can pick them up for a song. Really,
But
you
I
know.
heard that on the news, I think yesterday,
Yeah.
that they're going to start.
Yeah,
Making
Yeah,
the,
yeah,
big
yeah.
story of it.
Yeah, I
There's
mean,
a
I
It'll
was
be
shocked.
Online, but
After
not
200
in print.
and I don't know how many
44
years.
years.
23 years or
Because
something.
Yeah.
even now, when I'm
Start
reading, I
Edinburgh.
have to look up a
Yeah.
word just to
Edinburgh.
kind of remember where does
You
it
know what?
fit.
I'm in fact.
This is sad.
Yeah, it is really. I love to read, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't like to read off
computer
of
will never take the
computer.
place
And it
of-
means too, that at
No.
some point you won't be able to go to a library and look something up in an encyclopedia. in a
Right,
book.
if they're-
They will just eventually they'll wear out, and there you won't. There.
Already there are no card catalogs anymore.
No, yeah, that's
Yeah.
the thing of the
No,
future.
Isn't that
Yeah.
something?
Don't you love to get your hand around something and be able to open it and say, "Look, this is my
Oh,
my book."
right,
Yeah.
yeah, right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I
You know,
mean,
there's
but-
I think it's one of the Star Trek films. I mean, this was prescient because these things were made in the late 70s and into the 80s. The ones with the real Star Trek with Captain Kirk and Spock and the rest of them. And there's one where somebody, I think, gives Kirk a book for his birthday party, and this is like a valuable thing, you know, like
antique.
a real
Yeah,
book,
yeah.
you know, that you
Yeah.
can actually open because they already had in Star Trek the computer screens.
They were
where
that
it was-
advanced,
it was-
sure. Yeah.
They were like foreseeing the internet where they would be. But it's amazing to think we're actually coming to that point where books may actually be a thing of the past.
Well,
Remember a scene in the
that-
movie The Time Machine
Oh, or the
where one native group is saying, "Oh, there's our library."
Yeah, it's all dust.
And he goes in, and all the books have turned to dust.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
just crumble in his hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I was
really-
out with my daughter yesterday, and we were talking about something. She's got a little, I don't know what the hell it's called, iPad or something. She comes up with the answers. You
Yes.
you know,
And you know,
yeah.
good
It's-
and bad, you know.
Yeah,
but
they can get instant information.
That's right.
You know,
Yes,
you and
that
I-
is true.
But the trouble is then why learn it? You know, why have it here?
Well,
if
yeah,
if it's,
well,
if
that's part of it. You
and
know,
that's the problem because what if something happens you don't have this gadget with you and then you don't know anything.
Or to
Well-
be a teacher nowadays, assigning term papers. I mean,
Yeah.
everything's out there at once.
Yeah.
What's original? What's copy?
yeah, yeah, right, yeah. Oh, boy, that's a great, you know, Jeanette. That looks great. Yeah, I copied it from, you know,
Yeah.
Exactly.
from Britannica.
Yes,
You know, it was on my
exactly.
computer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the other part of that too is when you read, as they say, read, you pick up little moments in that story that is left out on something that's just a quick copy or a, you know, I think there's something left in your memory, you know. And of course, math and all that. I mean, nobody knows 2 times 2 till they hit that, you
Yeah.
know. And I think sometimes you need to have immediate information. You know, you don't have to know everything.
No.
Something. a
Speak-
little
But
Yeah.
it takes away the incentive to learn and
Research.
memorize
Yeah,
because
it's all
if you
there.
grow up knowing that all you have to do is tap it in and it's right there.
But then we
Yeah.
might end up to be robotic.
You know what else too?
Very.
There's a lot of misinformation on the internet also.
sure.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah.
But what were you
Wikipedia, yeah.
and
But speaking of math, when I went to school, you had to do everything on paper. To show
Yeah,
how
sure.
you
Right.
did it.
Yeah.
And now they tell you, bring a calculator.
Yeah, right.
yes. Oh,
Yeah.
oh that's
It's
mandatory
faster, it's
now.
more accurate.
Calculators.
Oh, definitely. I see that with my grandchildren.
Can you bring an abacus?
Well, they
Slide
if
rule.
anybody knew how to do that, huh? But
Slide rule, that's obsolete. I mean,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
something that's totally
And for
obsolete.
Yeah, you don't hear
I
the
bring it
word
up and nobody knows what I'm talking
tractor or-
about. Slide.
But when I was in high school, you had to
You
know how
had to
use
have
a
all
slide
this.
rule.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's just
That was a standard tool, you know, for
Yeah.
math and science.
when I try to reminisce in my mind, naturally, this helps me do more of it. I really am throwing. No, we don't do that anymore. We don't do that
No,
anymore.
no.
We don't have that anymore.
No.
So you
No.
know,
I think
possibly.
we mentioned this before too. Like I had an experience at the part-time job where the salesman was trying to figure out whatever the sales tax was, and I gave it to him. How did you do that?
Yeah.
This wasn't a young kid either, this guy.
Yeah.
No, he's in his little calculator.
Yes.
You know what? Just for kicks, I always balance my checkbook, but all the additions and subtractions and all that, I do all,
And
on
bring it up to-
paper.
Yes.
On paper down,
Me
and
too.
and it balances.
Me too.
Yeah, right.
And
I
since
try
they
and do
give
as
no
much
more
as,
interest, it's not going
Yeah.
to be hard to figure out, is it?
I wonder, yeah, it isn't, yeah. But I wonder if John, if what you're talking about, those kids are going to run into, say, Alzheimer's because they're not using their brain.
Parts of it, yeah.
They're not using, they're not, you remember exercise,
And write it 100 times,
yeah.
you.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
the way you got to.
But it never left you once
no.
you did it that way,
No,
know. But
I should not
sad.
throw peanuts in the water.
Yeah.
I should-
And then we've also had to do that on the blackboard if it was like in our case, penance or
Yeah,
something. But
yeah.
it still stayed with you.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
Answer
did
this.
remember
Put all
it.
of your financial records on the computer. Ultimately, how safe is that?
Not.
Yeah.
It is not.
It is
Crash.
not.
Could
No.
crash.
Yeah.
When they talk about terrorists, that they could shut down the power grid or water purification. Well,
Yeah.
in 1940, German terrorists couldn't have done that to us because it wasn't computerized. You couldn't do that in 1940 or 1960.
Or find
But
out a
now,
formula.
because everything is, you're actually making yourself vulnerable
Yeah.
to a type of attack that if we didn't have this, the vulnerability wouldn't be there.
No. Yeah, they can.
Scary.
Well, I
things
get
in there,
annoyed.
but-
Let's say you make a call to a business place, and now they want you. They've answered you by saying, "Hello, Jeanette." Right? They've answered you. I have not said a word. "Hello, Jeanette." Now they want me to tell them where I live, my phone number,
Yeah.
and it's right there in front of them.
they-
Naturally, they're verifying.
They're
That I
verifying,
understand.
yeah, yeah.
I understand that. But to ask more and more and more
True.
questions, where you have to run and find that paper with your account number, or
Yeah.
and but
Well, when I have a hard time understanding, and I'm not on Facebook or any of these
me
things,
neither.
but I cannot understand the mentality that says, I want my private life to be out there available for everybody to know every minute of the day what I'm doing, what I think, where I've been.
I want thousands
That's
of
foreign
friends.
to my way of thinking.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think people want to protect their privacy,
Right.
not have everybody on earth have access
That's
to know
right.
what you did the day
Totally
before
different
yesterday.
mindset among the young.
Facebook. I'm going to bed. I just got up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm on vacation.
cares,
Yeah.
you
What
know.
does that tell the guy next door? They're on vacation.
They're on
Yeah,
vacation.
let's
Well, yeah,
go.
that's
let's
the
go,
point.
yeah.
I don't think there's
See?
there's no self censorship here. There's nothing in the mind that says, wait a minute, am I giving too much information? Is this dangerous?
Yeah.
Can this come
Well,
back?
they say in
Nope.
job hunting it is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's
They
no
can go and
privacy.
trace
Yeah.
everything
They're
you
putting
do.
all this nonsense that they did in high
Yeah.
school and college, and future employers say, we don't
So
want
now
this
you're
idiot. We don't want
right.
this idiot working
yeah,
for us.
Yeah, I was
Right.
drunk last night. Gee, I got picked up by the
Who's
police,
gonna-
and
Who's going to have the secret code, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
because
that's
there is
the way-
there's no mental self-discipline involved.
yeah.
Nothing. And I always say when I see this all day long, what are you talking about? I deal with youth, and
Yeah.
they're constantly, and they're always looking for that phone. And
Well,
what could you say?
yeah.
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 I'm from also a time, I believe we brought this up before. Our first place that we ever lived was a rented apartment, and the phone was on the wall. It was there, but you had to put a nickel in the box to use the phone. I think that's a marvelous
Yeah. Yeah.
discipline right there.
Yeah.
The nickel was
That's
the fee.
that's the kind of phone that Jack Benny had installed in his house.
Yeah.
Got a
But
cigarette machine
there
too.
was an
Yeah.
actual.
Yeah, you had a
There
pop
was
machine,
a
too.
subject like
Yeah,
that, and then
yeah.
once a month the fellow would come and open a box, and
Yeah.
That
it'd
is
be
a
your
good
phone
idea.
bill.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think that's too bad.
No.
No.
That for sure saves unnecessary costs.
Right, but I mean, when I hear everybody telling me about their kids' $300 and $500,
Phone bills. Yeah. We are going to ring someone's. No. Time for a little break again, folks. Remember, you're with us, and we hope you're enjoying this as much as we are, even half as much. You're listening to Meet the Chicago Historians on the last day of winter, Anno Domini 2012.